All right, before we go into the fun half, I want to talk about this Warren proposal, because we have talked about in the past the idea of how would you break up these big companies? And at the time, I think these big tech giants. And at the time, I said, like, I don't know. I know there's a way, and there are there's policy apparatus that are working on this. And at the very least, this is, I think, from anti-monopoly folks and antitrust folks, they would say this is a very measured, somewhat moderate proposal. I think Matt Stiller made a point on Twitter about the Sherman Antitrust Act actually having criminal liabilities as well. But Warren announced the proposal, I guess today she's announcing it. And it calls for the appointment of regulators who would unwind tech mergers that illegally undermine competition. And it would also, this is sort of consistent with the SynFin laws that we used to have, the syndication laws, which first, I think, came from movie theaters back in the early 1900s. Or mid-1900s, where you could not be a movie studio and own movie theaters. And the reason was because, obviously, you're going to favor your own movies in these movie theaters. You're going to crowd out the competition of other people making movies. And so, and then we saw this in television as well. Bill Clinton rolled this back in the Telecommunications Act of 1996, where studios, NBC studios, could not sell to NBC television because obviously they would be incentivized to only put on projects made by NBC television. And now, you know, the theory, I guess, was that, well, and it was problematic for several years. And then I think cable basically opened it up quite a bit. The reason why you got that Union Cafe show that Jim Fallows did was a perfect example of like what happens when NBC produces its own shows. Garbage. I was offered it, but let's not get it there. All right, so here's the point. She is proposing that you cannot have a platform that both offers a marketplace for commerce and participating in that market. So, for instance, Amazon Marketplace cannot, every time you search for something, provide you with something that is an Amazon, either an Amazon product or something that has been promoted by Amazon. Right? So, because Amazon now is the #1 search function for products. People don't go to Google when they want to buy a hamper for their apartment. They go to Amazon and they buy a hamper, and then Amazon pushes the product that they have the most financial interest in. That's problematic. On YouTube, if it's going to be a marketplace for videos, should not be promoting products or video products that they have a financial incentive in. You cannot be both the distribution mechanism and also a supplier to that mechanism. I mean, this is what net neutrality is about. Fundamentally, the idea that Verizon has the pipes that they're sending to your house, and they cannot disadvantage competitors to what goes through those pipes to what they are sending through the pipes.
Point of information. Sorry. How's that going to work with Facebook? Because the product there is your personal information.
Well, it would force the rollback of some acquisitions by Facebook. So there are deals for things like WhatsApp and Instagram, or Amazon's addition of Whole Foods and Google's purchase of Waze are examples of what they would do to unwind these things. Companies would be barred from transferring or sharing user data with third parties, which is everything that Facebook is, right? I mean, that's Facebook's model. So those are the major elements of this. And what would happen in terms of like how they would determine on some level which companies are subject to what level of scrutiny and regulation. Warren's plan creates two tiers of companies. Those that have an annual global revenue of $25 billion or more, and those that with an annual revenue of $90 million to $25 billion. The upper tier would be required to structurally separate their products from their marketplace. Smaller companies would subject to regulations, but would not be forced to separate themselves from the online marketplace. So you could have smaller entities. And the thing is, what is their product on Facebook, right? It is like the data, and
it's you.
Data. That's it.
And it's you. And so you can't both collect this data and monetize it in the way that Facebook would want to and remain that big. And so there may be other proposals that are released to this. Hopefully, this is one of those situations where, like, Warren again, and I saw a quote where Vows, who is now the campaign manager for Bernie, had said just weeks ago before he was appointed the campaign manager that Warren seems to be winning in the marketplace of ideas in terms of rolling out new policies. Bernie's not quite there yet in terms of like starting to introduce new policies. Of course, many of his old policies have now been adopted by everybody in the field, which is great.
Trendsetter.
But,
Also, Faz Shakir, first Muslim appointed to manage a campaign.
Indeed. But, it's always, what have you done for me lately is in this business, as it were. But
And also in Eddie Murphy.
Right. Largely that's what happened like with Woody Allen with this comedy. Like you watch a Woody Allen movie now and it's like, oh, all these jokes are old. I hear these everywhere. And it's because they all were basically derived a whole generation of comedy writers.
Yeah, that's my issue with watching Woody Allen movies.
There's
now.
other tangential issues. And to be honest, I haven't watched one in a long time. But that's...
No, that literally is my issue with Woody Allen. He's not funny.
Well, there you go.
Well,
I don't want to get too sidetracked by Woody
Sorry,
Allen.
let's get
here.
back
the
to
point
Warren.
is Warren. But so this is great. I mean, this is exactly in a perfect world. The only thing that's different in a perfect world from this one, where we are seeing candidates try to outdo each other with making government a tool to do good and empower citizens, not as consumers, but not just as consumers, as citizens. Because much of this has to do with democracy as much as it has to do with material benefits for people. And we should understand that material benefits for individuals is not just a function of you as a consumer. When you have this type of concentration of wealth, there's two things that happen. One being that you lose political power, or they gain too much political power, but also the economy becomes far less dynamic, and you get far less development of new companies. And new companies provide more opportunities for people, both in terms of wage increases and in terms of just opportunity to spread the wealth. So this is encouraging to see this stuff. And this is stuff I feel like Warren would have rolled out 2 years ago if Clinton had been named president, and she would be just championing this in the Senate.
Yep, she's going to make a great SEC chair under President Bernie.
Precisely. Or Treasury Secretary.
Or just be in the Senate and get these proposals in.
That's true. She will be, if she stays in the Senate, she'll be one of the great senators. That's a given.